I want to welcome everybody here to the House Regulated Industries Committee. If it's not 30 minutes past adjournment, it's close enough. We have a quorum present. We have just a few bills today. One of them, I believe, has been withdrawn. House Bill 904, Representative Vance. You say you got a little bit more teaking. I guess that conversation walking across the street with me must have stimulated something, huh? All right. Very good. All right, first up, out of courtesy to Chairman Stevens, would you please come on up? House Bill 843.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is one of the easier alcohol bills that you'll hear about. This was one that relates to economic development. Generally, Georgia alcohol laws allow for the process for local governments to allow Sunday alcohol sales service for bars and some restaurants beginning at 11 a.m. until no later than 11:30 p.m. There are exceptions to the current law which allow for Sunday sales until midnight on Sunday for public stadiums, coliseums, auditoriums, and special entertainment districts, which is what this is. This legislation pertains to special entertainment districts that are defined and created under the current law many years ago. Underground Atlanta qualified under the Georgia law and was designated as a special entertainment district. And this legislation simply allows Underground Atlanta to continue to qualify as a special entertainment district. Currently, to qualify as a special entertainment district, it must be financed whole or in part by public funds, which is the reason for the bill. This language specifically on line 14 allows special entertainment districts to qualify as a project which has received financing in whole or in part by public funds. And Mr. Chairman, that's all it does. This is a opportunity for someone who wants to invest heavily in Underground Atlanta to try to make something go of it.
I'm a little bit dismayed to see that this bill comes for the full committee with no changes. So it must have been pretty good.
It's tight.
And all right, questions, Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, for anybody who was at that subcommittee meeting last week, Mr. Chairman, I can tell you that we thoroughly debated this, we vetted this, we went through it word by word. And it came out of subcommittee with a unanimous recommendation that it do pass. And I will add to the committee, I question the need for this bill. And Chairman Stevens and I talked about this. We had not one but two members of our legislative council look at it. And if I could just direct you to line 14, the real crux of the bill here is which receives or has received financing. And since this property in this what would be this entertainment district are now in private hands, that changes and the need therefore arises here so that we can move this forward, Mr. Chairman, and give the Atlanta City Council the language that they need to be able to support this investment.
All right. All right, we have a few questions. Mr. Ridley.
Yes, sir. To Chairman Stevens, line 22, it says on Saturdays from 11:55 p.m. and the 3 hours immediately following such time. Is that supposed to be a.m. or is that right?
I don't have the bill in front of me. I apologize.
The way I read this is saying on Saturdays from 11:55 p.m. and the 3 hours immediately following, which puts it over into Sunday morning.
Yes, sir.
At 2:55, I believe.
So, but on Sundays you can serve from 11 a.m. until 12 midnight. So I'm just wondering if that's a mistake. If that's supposed to be 11:55 a.m. Nope, it's supposed to be p.m.
It's p.m.
Okay.
Any further questions, Mr. Ridley?
Boy, it would have just been easier to say 3 p.m., 3 a.m.
Any other questions?
I'm good now. Yeah.
All right.
Point taken.
All right, number 26, who would that be down there? Ms. Manor.
Thank you, Chairman Stevens, for bringing the bill. And as the only Atlanta legislator that's up here on this committee, I do want the committee to know that no one in the city has come to me to say that they were opposed to the bill. And the groups that are representing Underground Atlanta did come to me to speak to me about the bill. So I am in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 28.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Why can't we wait till 12 o'clock on Sunday? Why can't we wait till 12 o'clock on Sunday? Why we gotta be at 11 a.m. on Sunday?
That's the way the original language was placed, as I recall. It's for these special entertainment districts. It may be something to do with at these special events, if you will. You know, River Street qualifies as one of these as well, and it very well could be these special events.
And I think local government also has to say in that matter, don't they?
The point is well taken, that the local government are the ones that has to police this stuff and oversee it anyway, but that's a very good point.
All right. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for being a little late. I didn't know where you were. I just wanted to say this, that I'm old enough, most of you are not, I'm old enough to remember when Underground Atlanta was vibrant and a critical part of downtown Atlanta. I personally would like to see it reassume its position, and I know the question's on 11 o'clock, but Sundays are always dear to me. But I say what I said during the 92 fight over the lottery. Every man ought to have a right to go to hell. So I think this would certainly help that district over there.
Thank you.
Well, 50% of my people are for it and 50% against it, and I'm with the people. But really, I'm very much in support of this bill. Very much in support.
Thank you.
Dane Williams, does your helpmate give you those instructions?
You won't leave me alone, boy.
All right. You know, I'm going to bend from the rule right now. Usually we don't take testimony, but since we have a precedent that a bill that was going to be pulled off is now back on the calendar, we're going to allow them to speak on the bill. So does anyone wish to speak on this bill? And it would be a no more than 60 seconds, please. Reverend Brother Griffin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Elmer Stansel. We represent the developer at Underground Atlanta and the owner of Underground Atlanta. We appreciate Chairman Stevens bringing this bill.
Who is the owner?
Sunil Lalani. Lalani Ventures is the name of the company.
I believe I know that name.
You may, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you so much. Can you tell us do you have any privileged information to tell us what they're going to do with it?
I don't, sir.
You know, Underground has had such a checkered past over the decades. I think the last go-around was that they had a lot of street violence and things like that, so.
Yes, sir. I think this is a major component of how they plan to redevelop the area, along with some other property that Mr. Lalani and his associates have purchased in the downtown area.
Well, Atlanta's doing a lot over in that part of the town. It goes back. I actually come that way from my apartment every morning, and I hadn't had to wash my car yet, so they're doing a lot better with regentrifying that area. All right? Brother Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Mike Griffin, Public Affairs Representative of the Georgia Baptist Mission Board. Thank you for the privilege, Bill. Just say something here quickly in a minute. But Georgia Baptists do oppose any expansion of alcohol sales in the state of Georgia, period. But we've been dealing with this a long time. My first time down here was in 2007 we're dealing with the Sunday sales. And, you know, our issue has been, give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And it's just like, when is this going to ever be where we're going to draw a line and say, this is all we ever wanted, we're not going to expand it. We keep on, we're going to be selling it 24/7, including lemonade stands one day. I mean, it's just like, we're not going to control it any. We're concerned about the public health and safety issue. This is not about being a teetotaler. And we do believe, and I have the data to show it, I've studied this through the years, that accessibility does equal sales. Sales does equal consumption. And the more alcohol people consume, there's the potential for problems, although we do believe in personal responsibility. It's just through the years, we just keep on dealing with this until for long, it's just going to be gone on Sundays. You can just sell it anytime, 24/7. And this all came out with a real sense of integrity. Hey, we just want to do it this way, and this is all we're going to ever do it. And it's just like every single year, it just keeps on keeping on, and it just seems like there's never a stop. And I just think we need to maintain our level, because this is what we could end up passing, and next year we may end up doing something else. You practically have, we just basically opened the thing wide open. But I just wanted to mention that to you, and I appreciate your opposition. But thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the privilege.
Chair is grateful to hear from you.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions? If not, oh, I see we have one, we got two more that's open. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to have a comment. Being born and raised in New Orleans, and to come here with all the rules around buying alcohol, you have no idea how many adult temper tantrums I have had to control with relatives coming to visit me, particularly my dad, who I think has Jack Daniels running through his blood at this time. You tell him he can't buy Jack Daniels at Walmart, and he is unhappy, along with the rest of my family. So I think sometimes we don't realize what goes on around Georgia, that this may not be normal for all people. So just want to put that out there.
Well, Representative Hutchinson, I can tell that your father is probably a real CA, and I don't mean constitutional amendment. All right, number 26. Ms. Maynard.
Thank you, Chairman. Just clarifying that the reason most likely the bill is written from 11:55 a.m. on Saturday in 3 hours is because in places like the city of Atlanta, venues are open until 3 a.m. And so if someone is out on a Saturday night, they don't want to stop selling the alcohol at midnight. So that's why it's until 3 a.m. Thank you.
Chairman Stevens, will this affect any other project in the state that you know of? Nothing around Chatham or anywhere else?
No, sir, we already have the designation on River Street for those of you come there. And again, just to clarify, this is not expanding anything that we're doing currently in these special entertainment districts. All that it's doing is saying that it has that you can add a private ownership and investment, if you will, rather than it having to be partly owned by public interest. That's all the bill does. It doesn't expand anything at all that's not currently law.
Do we have any more questions from any of the committee members? If not, what's the will of the committee? We have a motion. We have a second. Any further questions? Any comments? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? You're on the way to rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
All right. I see Representative Barton. Is Representative Gullett here? You want to do your, let's see which one of y'all could be the quickest. Mr. Gullett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have House Bill 575. It's the original one, LC 540207. And what this bill does is makes a significant step towards enhancing our economic freedom here in Georgia by ensuring the professional landscape remains dynamic and accessible. I think too many talented individuals today probably find their paths blocked sometimes by unnecessary occupational barriers, and this bill proposes to give a pathway to dismantle those barriers. It empowers individuals and entities to challenge regulations that are outdated, unnecessary, or overly restrictive. And by establishing a review process for these regs, we not only are upholding the standards of our professions, but also embracing a system that supports innovation and adaptability. So what we're not trying to do is diminish quality or compromise safety. Instead, we're ensuring that regulations serve the public interest without imposing undue burdens on aspiring professionals. So what is the problem statement? Usually when I'm sitting in your seats, I'm saying, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? So I would say, for me, it's we have all too often outdated and unnecessary regulations blocking people trying to enter the job market. And so what are we trying to accomplish other than just saying, solving the problem statement? I'd say it's trying to ensure that our regulations serve the public interest without placing undue burdens on those seeking to enter various professions. And I think this bill is striking the right balance by ensuring regulations fulfill their purpose without becoming obstacles to professional entry. And so what this bill does is it establishes a process for individuals or entities to petition boards to review specific regulations. The review criteria includes assessing applicability and necessity of the regulation, its fulfillment of legitimate objectives, and whether it's the least restrictive means to ensure the public safety and well-being. If a petition is submitted, the agency must respond within 30 days, either denying the petition with reasons or initiating rulemaking proceedings to change the rules. In legal challenges against occupational regulations, the plaintiff prevails if it's proven that the regulation unnecessarily burdens entry into profession and doesn't meet the stated criteria. And in those cases, the court can enjoin enforcement of the regulation and award attorney's fees and costs to the plaintiffs. So ultimately, short answer, you have a board that has rules and regs. If I'm a member that's under that board, I'm an engineer and I'm at the engineering board, and there's a regulation, I'm not saying there is, a regulation to all my engineerings need to be stamped with a purple stamp. There might be a legitimate reason for a purple stamp, but why is that? This gives the ability for me to say, as someone regulated by this board, can you tell me why I need a purple stamp? This is, is that the least restrictive means? There's 3 categories that you can fall under. Is it currently applicable and necessary? Does it fulfill a legitimate objective? And is it least a restrictive regulation for the safety and well-being of the citizens? They can come back and say, yeah, you need purple for whatever reason. I can either agree or disagree with that, and I can go to court just like you can today. But if they say, purple, that's at the time that black ink was running dry, we said it needed to be purple for whatever reason, so we knew official ones instead of blue. That would then, they could go through a rulemaking process to change that particular rule. That's, like I said, a kind of a fantasyland example. One example that I've had, some of my problems that I've had really is with constituents dealing with Secretary of State's boards when they're licensed and getting a response. Sometimes it's getting a response to get approved. Sometimes it's getting a response to a question of overrule and reg. And this really just empowers them to get to that answer, because sometimes it's months and months. And if there's for example, I have a constituent who was trying to open a used car dealership to sell personal. It was not, I think he sold like 11 cars a year was his goal, 11 or 12 cars a year, not a used car lot. So he goes to get his license. One of the things you have to have as a location of your business that has a separate entry from a current business that you have. So he's an insurance guy. He's got to have a separate door, not connected to his current office for this business. He has to have a landline phone. And it took 7 months for him to get approved. And the only reason he got approved, and I think in that 7 months, is because he's raising Cain with me, and I'm pounding on Secretary of State's office to say, can you tell me what's the delay? And so the question is, why does it have to be a separate office? There are probably great reasons for it. Why do you have to have a landline today? Probably great reason for that too. But these people need to know what these rules and regs are for. And that gives them the ability to do it. And if something is outdated and is a challenge to the market, this is the ability for them to work for that process and to make rules and regs that enable people to get into the business market, but also keep safety in mind as they do it. So happy to answer any questions that you might have.
with Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative, for bringing this as one of the signers on this bill.
Appreciate your support on it.
I was listening, and you made real good sense, and everything's pretty plain, but the one thing I disagreed with you on is trying to get through to any bureaucratic office. It's not the regulation, it's the fact that you can't talk to anybody, and when you do, they don't tell you anything. I think that no matter what we do with this regulation, and I think it's great legislation, we just have to have a house cleaning and a redirection and re-instruction people who you call in state government. They either don't know or don't answer. That's not popular because we're so used to the tail wagging the head up here until it's gotten unbelievable. But good legislation. Next time, let's make sure and get the bureaucrats on the ball.
Thank you, and I agree with you. I think one of the things that we have as representatives of the people is being responsive to the people who have questions, and sometimes it's difficult for us as representatives to get answers, and that's something, you know, I don't know how to fix that with legislation, but ultimately customer service is what, you know, the people who serve in the government are in the business of doing and should be responsive. Thank you.
Representative Williams, it's good to hear you speak with such passion. Ms. Maynard will be taking your application for a party switch.
I love you, Miss Maynard. Hold the act. Run it through Buddy first, and we'll talk over the weekend.
All right, Representative Bennett.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And you know I have a passion for this type of legislation. I have a couple of questions, however. Due to the recent experiences that we have had, the end of this year for particularly a certain group of professionals having to get relicensure, and I know this is talking about licensure, but I have to include relicensure. What we found out, or what came to the forefront, is that the Secretary of State's office does not have the capacity with the workers to be able to provide reasonable service within a reasonable amount of time. And so my question becomes, are we putting the cart before the horse? I think this is great. I don't know that there's any evidence that 30 days is sufficient or can meet the capacity of our current Secretary of State's office. So in that regard, how did you come up with a 30-day window of response? That's my first question, Mr. Chairman.
So I think for me is if you have a business and I'm paying rent in a location waiting for my license to get approved or denied, and I continue to pay rent for 6 or 7 months, 30 days paying rent without making any money or the ability to make money just made sense to me. As far as, you know, that's how I came up with it. It seemed like, 1 month seemed like a fair amount of time. Is that undue, necessary? I don't know if I feel like these are Secretary of State employees. These boards are often appointments. And so it's not necessarily Secretary of State employees working through this. It's the boards that oversee these. And Secretary of State helps corral them, but it's not directly a Secretary of State issue.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Thank you for that response. However, under this bill, it appears as though a great amount of offices within the Secretary of State's Professional Licensure Board would be impacted.
Sure.
And we currently have information that they don't have the current staffing, and there is work being done on helping to remediate that situation. So I'm concerned that if we place an arbitrary 30-day requirement on a licensure board without actually finding out what the issues are for creating. Now I am in very much support of the public and the public being responded to in a reasonable amount of time, but I'm concerned that we may be imposing arbitrary requirements and regulations on a system that does not have the capacity quite yet to handle it. So I would also like to see some work done to help with the capacity building, or at least extend it beyond 30 days. Thank you.
Sure. And I think, whatever the will of the committee is, if it's something that we don't want 30 days and we want 30 days from when they meet in a regular meeting to decide, I don't know exactly what that looks like, what you're looking for, but 30 days was a good starting point for me, and thank you.
Ms. Maynor.
Thank you, Chair. So we have this letter in here from American Institute of Architects, but this is just one group that is opposed, but the bill is for all licensees.
Right.
Okay, and
I
so,
haven't seen that letter, but I have talked to someone over the weekend.
okay, and then, so for me, this issue has come up with a lot of my constituents, because think about, we have physicians that have finished their residency and they are not able to actually go and work because they're not able to get their actual license after they finish their residency, which is a problem because as residents, they are paid a certain amount and people are budgeting their income. And so if you have a doctor that is no longer a resident, no longer receiving pay, but then they still have rent to pay, we can't say that the government does not have capacity. The government needs to figure out something to make sure that we are providing the services we're supposed to provide to them. So I support the bill. To your point, we can't stop businesses and professions from doing what they need to support Georgia. Maybe we need to look at putting in some sort of artificial intelligence mechanisms into the Secretary of State's office to help. I don't know, but I support the bill and my constituents support it as well.
Thank you. And again, I haven't read the letter from the architects. I did talk to them on, I think it was Friday afternoon maybe, about potentially what their concerns were. But when they came, there was no one who came to the subcommittee to talk about it. And the bill's been out there for a year. I dropped it last year. So, nothing like a committee meeting to get people excited.
Very good. Ms. Bennett, I see your light's back on again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I do support being able to satisfy our constituents, our consumers, and our workers to make sure that they are working within a reasonable amount of time. What would be the penalty if licensure board was unable to meet that 30-day? What is the penalty?
It's not stated in the bill.
I don't know what to say to follow up with that. We have rules and regulations, but there's no penalty if they meet or don't meet it. I'm just concerned about the capacity, and I would prefer, Mr. Chairman, if we table this until we could have more conversations about the capacity for the licensure boards to be able to meet this demand.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to call on our counsel in just a second. The way I read this about right of action, that they can file in court where the administrative law judge can hear this.
Right, that's correct.
And then, of course, from there in the legal process that they could probably mandate an answer from those folks. We've got a couple more questions before I call on our counsel. Number 16.
Thank you.
Chairman Ridley.
Thank you for bringing this bill, and I'll tell you the reason why, and I think this is kind of where you've experienced a lot of problems. I think we get looking at the big picture, and it's just the little people. I had a guy that was wanting to sell utility trailers in his front yard. The Department of Revenue, the Secretary of State kept telling him he had to have a business license. Well, he's in the county doesn't offer a business license. For 3 weeks, we went back and forth. They told him to go to the city and get a business license. He don't live in the city, so he can't go to the city and get a business license. So this went on for 3 weeks just about requiring a business license that the county does not require, but I couldn't get them to understand. The other part was they kept saying, like you were talking about, the ones you got to have a separate interest. Well, he's sitting on 20 acres and has 2 entrances but 1 address, and so he basically had to end up going and getting 1 building, a separate address for it. So it's just those kind of hurdles, and this went on for probably 3 months to sell a utility trailer under that. So this happens every day. We get phone calls every day about just this little stuff that people can't get their business, they can't get their license to start doing stuff just off this stuff. But of course, nobody ever calls you back whenever they tell you they're going to. And I know they got a lot of phone calls. But I want to thank you for the bill. And I think the 30 days is plenty long enough. Now, if you want to say if it's got to be a committee that has to meet and be approved, and then 30 days after that, that may be a separate problem. But I think if you file your paperwork and you're in contact with them, 30 days is plenty of time for them to give you your license or figure out that you don't need a business license in the county.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. I just want to ask you a question. You said that, I'm presuming when you said a trailer, you're talking about a casual sale, or you talking about somebody's opened up a retail outlet?
No, he was selling about 4 or 5 utility trailers.
So he actually had a business. All right, does somebody down there have their lights on and cut them off? Ms. Maynard?
I was just gonna say that lines 52 through 53 does give some sort of recourse, but I'm sure legislative council will
Right.
expound on
So,
that.
I mean, and sure, they'll read into that. The reason we had that was basically if you got an answer and you didn't agree with that answer, your ability to move forward, saying, you know, the purple ink, I still don't think it should be purple ink, I can't find it, whatever, and then, you know, going through that process.
All right. Collect your thoughts. I'm gonna ask the legal counsel to give us a couple ideas on something. Sean Marie, does this, when we're talking about occupational licensing, how far the extent of that? Is that just those occupational licenses under the Secretary of State's office? Or is this some of the other licensees also that are affiliated to other departments or freestanding?
Well, I think the way, if you look on lines 30 through 38, it looks like to me that it's meant to be broader than the ones that are in the Secretary of State's office. And it seems like it is attempting to cover something much broader than that. Because we already have a definition in Title 43 that relates, if you're trying to just talk about the boards that the Secretary of State's office has jurisdiction over. And so I believe that this is meant to be broader than that.
Right.
All right.
And it extend to any board underneath that title, which is Title 43, which includes health boards and, you know, like medical boards as well.
So we're gonna rope them all in then? Pretty well.
If it's in Title 43.
All right. Secondly, on respect to, if you would, on respect to private action, could you give us a little bit of clarity as to that section 52 to 60?
It appears that it is attempting to take advantage of the procedures that are already outlined in Chapter 13 of Title 50. And in that case, we do have, once you've exhausted all your administrative remedies, then you can seek redress in the courts. And it appears to me that that this is an attempt to take advantage of that. And in those lines, it specifically says that if the court were to find for the plaintiff that they could enjoin further enforcement of the challenged occupational regulation and then award attorney's fees and costs to the plaintiffs.
All right. Ms. Minor, I saw your light flickering again. Are you? Go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I was just gonna say, imagine if a constituent does need a problem solved. Imagine that they have to get to the point where they have to go to court to get a solution. I would hope that this bill would prevent that, because the the constituent would have to pay. I mean, I guess it is good that attorney fees could be repaid if it is at the fault of, well, I don't know if I agree with that part. I guess I'm a little questionable about that, but I'm just thinking out loud, sorry.
That's all right. That's quite all right. At least you're thinking, and that's better than some folks. All right. To the chairman of the subcommittee that heard this, was there any testimony given against from any of the licensing boards, anybody from the Secretary of State's office or any of that folks? Did any of these people, any of these licensing boards come up?
It was under Chairman Earhart's subcommittee.
I'm sorry, under?
It was Chairman Earhart's subcommittee.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was addressing it to the wrong one. Chairman Earhart. Was there anyone that testified in opposition, any of the licensing boards or professional association?
We heard a few bills that day. We did not have anyone in opposition. I don't believe we had any testimony at all.
Buzz Brockway testified, but he just said everything else I said, yeah.
All right. That being said, I'm going to preface my movement on this bill. I think this is a good idea with good intentions. I do have some concerns about this bill, mainly because of the structure that we have in a lot of the licensing boards right now. Anybody that's had much to do with the professional licensing down at the Secretary of State's office, you know, it's kind of unique. One is that they're understaffed, severely understaffed. Supposedly when money has been appropriated in the past, somehow it always got sidetracked to some other area under that multi-fingered jurisdiction is what I'm told. Can't testify to that personally. I can testify after just a few years of service that we have an issue in the state of Georgia about these licensing boards. They're appointed by various and sundry appointees and such like that. And not all the time are licensing boards, occupational licensing boards, there for the protection of the consumer. A lot of times they're in there to be sure that their members don't get a lot of competition, if I might dare to say such a thing as that. But there's not a whole lot we can do about that except put in more bills. So that being said, I want to give everybody on the committee caution that you may, if we pass this bill out, we very well may be seeing this bill back again if Rule sends it back to the committee to rework. But that's quite all right if that's their wishes. So at this time, the chair will entertain a motion. Don't everybody get held up at one time.
For due pass.
Well, we don't usually do testimony at the committee meetings, but, you know.
I second the motion, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye. Ms. Bennett.
Would there be a possibility, would this be an appropriate time to make a friendly amendment to the bill?
You certainly can. This would be the time, even though we have already called for the question, and I'm sorry. But we will back up if so be, if the will of the committee. All in favor of backing up? To pacify Ms. Bennett, a loyal member of this committee.
This is Karen Bennett Day.
Within 45 days after submission, Mr. Chair.
All right.
I ain't gonna do it.
Can you give us the line on that?
Line 49. I wanted to say 60, but 45 might be for now.
Line 49, you wish to strike 30 and put 45 days?
Yes, sir.
Line, what's that, Karen?
49.
Well, we hadn't said it yet.
Is there any other amendments? Any other amendments? If not, then I'm going to let the chair will now back up, put this back in proper order. We have a motion to pass this bill, and we have a second. We now have an amendment to the bill.
You need a motion to approve?
Ms. Bennett, you have made you have spelled out your amendment. Do we have a motion on the amendment? We have a motion. Do we have a second on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Well, I believe the ayes has clearly got this one. At this point, what is the will? We have a motion and a second as amended. And would you prefer to do this as a committee substitute or as an amendment? Author of the bill?
Whatever y'all want to do. I don't care.
We'll do this as an amendment. If this thing gets chapped somewhere up the line, I don't want it coming back on this committee. All right, we have a motion.
Should take that
and
one.
we have it as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes clearly have it.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
All right, sir.
All right. Representative Barton, please. Well, I have a warm spot in my heart for Ms. Bennett.
Yeah.
As a physical therapist, she saw the will of voting for an occupational therapist license this morning.
Siri said that's what she thought. Thank you, Siri.
All right, House Bill 793, Representative Barton.
All right, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. As you said, House Bill 793, this is a bill just to get government out of the way for slowing down social workers who are getting their masters, the ability to practice faster. This will let them take the test their last semester of school, and once they graduate, they can go ahead and hit the road running. Right now, currently, they have to wait till graduation and then apply. So this will get more social workers working faster. And that's the gist of the bill.
You know what? That's a pretty straightforward and simple bill.
Pretty
It's-
good.
Since
You picked the slower one, I
I've
think.
been used to the mule hauling marriage therapy counselors for years since I know so much about it.
Pulled a few
I'm
of 'em
glad
out.
to see they found someone else to haul it. All right, questions? Ms. Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know I'm a licensed social worker.
Yes, ma'am.
And they did this before,
Yes, ma'am.
and they stopped it because they said that students could not do this prior. They could not take the test prior to graduation. So have they worked that out?
That's what this bill will do.
Okay.
All right,
I mean, I don't object.
all right. Ms. Minor.
Thank you for the bill. My question is for Representative Hutchinson. So it is the bill, or for the representative carrying the bill, is the bill saying you have finished your coursework, but you have not actually graduated from the institution, but you've completed all your coursework?
It's in your last semester, so you're still finishing up. You're still working on your master's.
And so what happens if they don't pass a class?
Well, they don't graduate, so there you go.
You take the license.
They can't.
This is just taking the test.
This is just taking the test.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right. Ms. Hutchinson again.
I was just going to answer the question. So
All right.
they're going to take this test in their last semester, so they're not finished with the coursework. But if you don't finish the coursework, you don't get the degree. I don't think there's a mechanism for the license to be revoked. But when you apply for a job, you have to show proof of your degree, and if you don't have your degree, the license doesn't mean much.
All right. Do we have any other questions from any of the committee members? All right. If not, what's the will of the committee? We have a motion. We have a second. We have any further discussion, any questions, any comments? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Ayes have it.
Thank you.
You're on the way. All right, let's see. Representative Vance, did I understand that you were, you do want this bill back on the calendar today?
Yes, sir, if I may.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, bring to you, House Bill 473.
No, we're gonna, Jan's passing it out.
All right.
Whatever that bill was that we just heard. They're not on the other, are they?
Well, we don't usually take testimony. Excuse me. All right.
Mr. Chair, I move due pass.
All right.
Thank you, Bill.
Brother Deloach, it is so good to see you. It's been a while. Last year, I think you had a similar bill. I do notice that you've got a couple of distinguished guests with you today from down at McIntosh County, Mr. A.D. Popple, the county attorney, and the county manager, Patrick. And I'm sorry, Patrick.
Zaux.
Yeah. Do y'all want to come up and sit with the chairman? I'm sure. I know that he did such a great job last year laying out what the reasoning rationale was, and not that he needs any help, but I know that any time that we have voting constituents in our districts, we always try to show them the proper courtesy. Don't I, Reverend?
Sometimes according to how you're feeling that day.
Don't I? Don't I always show proper courtesy to constituents? All right, you have the floor. We have a substitute, and if you'd call out your number.
The LC ends in 2334S.
All right.
Let me start off by saying it's always a distinguished honor and privilege to come before this committee. I appreciate the work that you do. This is the same bill that this committee passed out last year. It is passed out of your subcommittee now for the second time. What the bill does is, in order to offset lost tax revenues for the county and the state, where the state owns the most land. And in this case, in McIntosh County, it's not swampland, it's not low value land. It's beachfront, it's riverfront, it's marshes, it's incredibly valuable land. And when you take over 60,000 acres in a county the size of McIntosh off the tax digest, it's incredibly difficult to operate a county government. And even worse, it's incredibly difficult to operate schools and try to provide any of the additional things that you might want to do for those children who are really in a county that need the most help. And there's simply no revenue there to do it. So what we're proposing in this bill is that a county with that many acres of state-owned land be licensed to operate a bingo game. Now, to make clear, this bill changes the definition of bingo by adding a provision that it may be played on an electronic device. Anyone playing it has got to be present. You have to be within 3 feet of the machine. The machine doesn't pay out any money. You have to go somewhere else to collect your money when you win at bingo. So it's not a slot machine. The question raised in the subcommittee, and I'm not sure you got a real clear answer to that, was about how the money's divvied out. There are several references in this bill to a 1963 bill that authorized a grant in the Department of Forestry, and it spelled out that it would be paid just like paying a tax bill. So the money would be divvied out to the various governmental entities and the school board just on the same proportion as their millage rate. This bill, by the way, was passed by a very well-known legislator from Ware County named Harry Dixon. And as far as we've been able to determine, the only county that ever got a grant under this bill was Ware County. You've heard a lot about the bill before. The only other question raised in the subcommittee was about regulation, and I would draw your attention to page 5, starting on line 95, and that entire page deals with the Secretary of State and regulation, and the following page goes along and sets forth logs that are to be kept on the machines, and the machines that are allowed to be on premises, and the amount of money paid out. And then further, starting on line 147, the next page, it continues in giving the Secretary of State the authority, in fact, requiring them to inspect those machines to make sure that they're in good operating form, and it says that they must inspect them at least once a year. That basically, Mr. Chairman, is the bill. I'm trying to find a way to help the people in McIntosh County, and I'll tell everyone on this committee, quite frankly, these are the people, these are the children in the schools, these are truly the least among us.
All right, very good. For the benefit of the committee, y'all heard this bill last year, and as I look at this bill has not changed, has it?
It has not, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, this is the same bill that came out of this committee. And all of the eloquent speaking that Chairman Deloach has given was the fact that McIntosh County is a county that's 60,000 acres of property in McIntosh County is either owned or controlled by the state government or the federal government. And that's takes a lot of the tax base away. Now, I'm going to call on Mr. Popple. I know that he wasn't expecting it, but since he is next to you, probably the resident expert, could you tell us, the committee, a little bit about the impoverished situation that y'all suffer from?
I certainly can, Mr. Chairman. In years past, we've simply quoted the numbers you just gave and suggested that it wasn't fair, or that we need compensation to reflect the massive state and federally owned properties, which, by the way, 60,000 plus acres are held by the state of Georgia. An additional 30,000 plus acres are held by the federal government. That includes islands like Blackbeard Island with beachfront properties, Sapelo Island, the wildlife refuge at Harris Neck, and the entire Altamaha River Valley or River Delta. It's significant. But in the past, we've been accused or we've been replied to when we asked, alleging that it was anecdotal, that, it's not enough just to say how much land is owned by the state and federal governments. You need more. So we did our homework. And the fact is that we now know that more than 30% of our children wake up in poverty every single day in McIntosh County. Now, is that the worst poverty rate in Georgia? No. But it's the worst poverty rate that can't be addressed under the current situation. Other counties, the 158 remaining counties, don't have 60,000 plus acres of state-owned lands and an additional 30,000 acres of federally owned lands, which, by the way, add nothing, zero, to our local economy. There are no parks that are open. There's nothing significant about the state and federal ownership other than the fact that it's held in wilderness, and every once in a while a hunt gets held on these lands. So please understand that our children are doing without as a result. McIntosh County has carried the water in conservation for the state of Georgia for the last 60 years. And we're asking today that it be recognized and that we get some help. Our schools are cash poor. Our children are doing without. My wife volunteers, and I volunteer. I do what I'm told. But my wife volunteers at a major food bank there that serves 10% of our population every month. 10% of our population is seeking assistance at a food bank. I mean, this is no longer some type of anecdotal whine or cry. This is a plea for assistance, and we appreciate the attention you've given it, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Chairman Deloach, you got another before I start calling for questions?
I don't think I can add anything to that.
All right, start with Ms. Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one question. I'm 100% for this. What is the difference between the bingo machines and the other lottery-funded machines that we would find in various locations?
Probably the clientele you get with the bingo machine would be considerably different. Those scratch-off lottery tickets and things are generally taking money out of the poorest people in the neighborhood. That's not the situation you would find with someone that goes to an establishment that has these bingo machines. Many times they would be that they could even be from out of the community or out of state, but you find the clientele in those kind of places in other states where they have them are generally people that can afford to play.
I'm just trying to conceptualize how you play bingo on a machine. Like, are you is it like Zoom? Are you in a group, or is it? How do you play Zoom? How do you play bingo on a machine? Is what I want.
If I might, and I think I'm right when I say this, you play it on a machine, and it's similar to what some of the Indian casinos do. And it's you know what, I'm not even intelligent enough to know what it is, but you put your money in a machine and they spin the wheel or draw the numbers or whatever, and it sets up on these electronic machines. So instead of doing away with cards, the old-fashioned way of doing bingo with cards and all, then it's on a machine. You got the machine in front of you, and it puts those numbers out.
No, but it is truly a bingo game.
All right. Ms. Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing this bill to help impoverished people in the state of Georgia. I have two questions. One, you may have said it, so please indulge me. What is the population in McIntosh County?
It's a little over 10,000 currently, right around 11,000. And our food bank, like we talked about, serves around 1,000 people a month. In addition to that, I might also add that our Backpack Buddies program serves, which is in the middle school and elementary school, serves over 100 children every week. These kids take home for weekend nourishment and survival, nutrition. They take home kid-friendly food that they can eat. These kids are nominated by their schools and by their teachers. We have no idea from a food bank standpoint who they are. We simply provide those backpacks, those bags to the school. It's really something to see. I'd invite all of you down to McIntosh County to view one of these food bank operations because it's really something.
Second question, Mr. Chair.
I just want to add before we move on is that food bank he's talking about is not the only food bank in the county.
Again, thank you. I'm very supportive of food banks and food equity and getting food to children. I actually participate in stuffing backpacks at a local nonprofit to make sure the kids have food over the weekends. It would be very helpful if they could get the food over the summer through the food summer program, but that's not my next question. My next question is, with the adjusted net income from the bingo games, who will determine, where will that money go, and who determines how that money will be spent?
Okay, that's what we talked about is in the bill that is referenced. There was a 1964 piece of legislation. the county would be authorized under the existing legislation to build the forestry department, and you get paid just like is if that tax bill were sent to the owner of the property. So if the school board's millage rate is 57% of the total millage rate in the county, then that's how much of that money they get. And that's the way it's distributed, and by reference in the bill to the existing law, that's the way it would be done. Now, there's some language in here about what would happen if we exceeded the amount of money that the county would be due. Some of that money goes to the state, and then it can be used in the county for other projects. But that would be after they've been totally reimbursed for all the lost revenue by state-owned property.
All right. Number 28.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my friend from McIntosh County, thank you for bringing this bill. I've supported it last year, and I support it this year. You know, we talk about helping those rural parts of the state. I don't think there's any area in this state that needs it any worse than you people down there. You're not asking for a handout, you're asking for a hand up and allowing us to create something that will make you whole. And I don't think that a bingo game is going to be detrimental to the health of the state of Georgia. So I appreciate what you're doing, looking forward to supporting you here and on the floor when that time comes.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we have one other member that wished to speak, and I've been holding him to last because I know that he will absolutely try to take control. Brother Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to have a dear friend like you. Let me thank you two gentlemen, you and Zox. Thank you. As you hear that the people that really need it are not here to speak, and you all have come to speak for them. I represented McIntosh County 20 years ago. Have spent my entire life in and out of McIntosh County. In addition to the 90,000 acres that are not on the tax rolls, 90,000 or so, there used to be a thriving industry there, the shrimping industry. People were able to make it to middle class because of that. And then, in spite of all the other problems, that industry, the bottomed out because of costs and imports. And so they're about at the end of the rope. And sometimes it's hard to see exactly how bad it is because you only see sometimes a part of McIntosh County. There is a part. It's beautiful. And so it has attracted a lot of folk from North Georgia to come down and to enjoy and have nice houses. But there is a population there that is literally hungry. And in a state like Georgia, and they're not the only county, but this is the only county that all the land has been taken by the state and federal government. Yes, there's some things, there'd be opposition to some things, but nobody yet has come up with a better solution than bingo. And in the meantime, they're deteriorating, they're hurting. The per capita income there, when you take retirement income from other places that move there, is absolutely pathetic. It's a tough situation. It's tough to go in. Both of you have you got your whole life. You've known, and through your daddy, and Johnny was one of the best friends I ever had. But I know how that situation is, and this is the last call. If we have any love for our state and its 159 counties, then we are obligated morally to right a wrong that we created. We've got to right it. And we promised we were going to do it, and it was an empty promise. And so you gentlemen are standing at the Bank of Redemption, and you got a check that came back insufficient funds. It's time to pay up. State needs to pay up. It's a terrible situation.
Thank you very much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I don't see any other questions from any of the committee members. Quite simply, this is the same bill that, I spoke too quick. Very well. This is the same bill that Chairman Loach brought forward last year. Hopefully it had saw some type of gains for McIntosh, but it didn't last year because I think those were vetoed in the budget. I am familiar with that part of the world vaguely. I will tell you that it is quite interesting when you see that much land mass in a community, in a county that's owned by another government entity that pays no taxes. And I know that McIntosh is a lovely place. It's unique to the standpoint that not only do you have state, but you have federal ownership. One of the islands down there, I was reading it a while back, that they allowed some kind of a hunting on the island, federal island, and the fellow had a massive heart attack in his deer stand, and he was left there to die because the feds wouldn't even allow him to bring in a rescue helicopter to get him. And it's kind of interesting to me. I've also saw where some of your the county commissioners are being faced with putting a satellite 911 EMS station, fire station, something on some of the islands, and all this is quite expensive for a county that has no financial resources or limited financial resources. And then last but not least, you talk about the impoverished rate of the citizens down there. You had spoke, for the benefit of the committees, that Chairman Dixon in the day had passed a piece of legislation that the General Assembly never paid attention to. And that was for those counties that have that much territory would receive money through the forestry fund, which never happened. I think that maybe it had gotten some curt response over the years when that happened. Now on this issue, bingo is one of the, best of my knowledge, bingo is one of the two forms of gambling that's allowed in the state of Georgia by the Constitution. One is a lottery, and the other is bingo. And bingo is controlled by statute. And I think statutorily that it's free game, that if this committee or the legislature wishes to deal with this issue. So that being said, we have a member who is eager to make a motion. Representative Mitchell, you're recognized.
I think this is good legislation, Mr. Chairman, and I do move do pass.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any further questions? Do we have any comments? Is that a third to make the second? Very good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what's the will of the committee? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes clearly. I believe this is the second year in a row that you have had a unanimous vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Which, quite frankly,
Thank
gives
you.
me concern for my committee because we usually don't just 100% something out, nor do we usually pass out a bill as it is introduced. But we thank you so much for bringing your bill.
Well, you have some very
Gentlemen,
distinguished members.
Gentlemen, it's good to have y'all take your trip, hauled yourselves all the way up from McIntosh, and you're always welcomed up here.
It's an honor, sir.
Y'all got some good friends and representatives up here. All right. Last but not least. All right.
Chairman, I think it ought to be said that Brett Harrah, distinguished alumni, was their representative.
All right, we have before you HB 904. I think that Representative Vance has probably gone through a number of substitutes to this, because I know you've just about wore my admin out making copies. And this will probably be an awful good time for me to remind folks, lobbyists and others alike, that if they have a bill in front of this committee, it is their duty to bring the copies and the 0102 copies. Because Jan is about to wear herself out with this one alone today. And she's even more dear to me than a wife, because when my admin ain't happy, I ain't happy. Explain your bill.
Well, first I want to apologize to Ms. Jan, who has been an angel to me and with this legislation. She's guided me through, and I've offered for her the opportunity to kick my butt on several occasions because of the hardships I put her through. And if she wants to do it right here in public, sir,
Well, you know, the only thing I can tell you, Valentine's Day is about 2 days in advance, and if you want to bring her flowers, then you feel free to. All right.
You way ahead of me, sir, but no, you're not. I'd already thought about that. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, very briefly, this is a 90-page bill. 904. That's been drafted by a legislative council and chairman of various boards that oversee the licensing for electrical contractors, plumbers, conditioned air contractors, low voltage contractors, and utility contractors in Georgia. This current legislation was last updated in 1997. And what we desire to do today is to make it 21st century relevant. And it is supported by the plumbers, electricians, heating and air, utility contractors of Georgia. They support it. It passed a subcommittee with no opposition, and I have Mr. Roland Weekly here with me of a board. He'll explain that to you to make the explanations of this bill, and we'll go from there as quickly as we can.
Again, I'm Roland Weekly. I'm the chairman of the full board that covers the 5 trades that he mentioned. Part of the reason this thing gets changed is because you have 5 different boards that are giving input to this. So, and trying to corral them is like trying to corral cats. So that's part of the reason for that.
Coming up Mercury.
Yes. But along that lines, this original bill apparently was drafted in the 80s. And it was apparently drafted, the best I can tell, by each board separately without even being engaging each other. So there's a lot of fragmentation in it. Sean Marie has made a stellar effort to try to bring some cohesiveness to the wording and some of the functionality that is in these 5 different sections. So probably 80% of the changes is basically from her input of really correcting language, even grammar to that point. The remaining 20% is kind of small. For example, continuing education, some of the parts of the bill say you'll have no more than 4 hours max continuing ed. We're changing that to say no less than 4. The idea being that Georgia holds one of the lowest continuing education requirements in the United States. So the idea by changing that to no less than, at least the boards can take some action on their own without having to come back to the state to make some adjustments if there's a need to. That might come into play when you're trying to get reciprocity with contractors licensed across state lines. They might view us not compatible with them. So that's one of the type of changes. Others are things like calls for consulting engineer to be sit on the electrical board. The state doesn't define consulting engineer, they define it as professional engineer. So we're just changing that wording to be a professional engineer sits on the electrical board, of which I am. That's why I'm on that board. The others are things that says chief electrical inspector. Nobody goes by chief electrical inspector anymore, it's outdated. So we're making changes to say that basically if they are an inspector for a city or county and do electrical inspections as part of their daily activities, then they're qualified to sit on the electrical board. So there's things of that nature that we're trying to hit upon. Plumbing has added something where they've defined who can do medical gas for hospitals, and they've defined it to be the master class of plumber. They put that in there. We're correcting some of the advertising aspects of the bill as to who can advertise, trying to It addressed things like advertising in the yellow pages. Didn't mention the internet or anything else. Trying to open the door on some of the newer technologies in the way people advertise and who can advertise. The other things we're trying to do is open the door for, like in continuing education, you can use the internet. That's very important to South Georgia. Here in Atlanta, you can get all kind of people to give you continuing education through vendors and trade organizations. South Georgia, that's a little bit of a problem for them. So we're trying to make it more inclusive in that regard. One of the other items is some of the penalties were set like $500 in 1980. That $500 is now about equivalent to $150, $200 in today's dollars. So just for inflation, from the 1980s to now is a factor of 3 to 1. So we're saying that $500 ought to be 15. If it's $1,000, it ought to be 3,000, just to deal with the erosion of inflation on those penalties. One of the nicer ones, or better ones I think we've done, is that there is no provision for a business to keep its doors open if its agent that is licensed dies. So we're adding in here that you've got 90 days to replace that person, and in the case of the electrical board, you have another 90-day extension if the board so approves. So there's things like that. We're just trying to doctor this bill to make it, in my mind and my words, more realistic for today's age.
I might ask you a question. You just brought up a point. If the licensee dies, how will they follow through with business without replacing that person or somebody to oversee their work?
Well, as in the present law, technically shut the doors. That's not only a problem for the business. Imagine you're a client. You got halfway through a project, and now your electrical contractor, plumbing contractor isn't functioning. What do? So,
well, that's my question. What do you do?
In this case, we're saying in here, they can continue to operate for 90 days without that agent until they get a replacement. If they satisfy the law, they've got to have somebody qualified, which might mean they go to another company and say, well, you sign for us or whatever. But they've got to satisfy that in some manner until they can make their company whole again.
Is that in the language of this bill that they can do, that they will do that?
It's in the language of the bill that they've got 90 days to rectify it. They can continue to operate with momentum for 90 days, but they've got to rectify it. And if they can't do it in 90 days, they can come before the board and plead their case for another 90.
Questions from the committee? I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No.
You pretty well finished your presentation.
That's pretty much it. It's fairly simple.
Committee members. Chairman Collins.
I think that provision he just spoke about is tremendously important to a lot of different businesses throughout the state, or contractors throughout the state. I know a lot of small family businesses that rely on that license, and if something were to happen to the license holder, they still have the knowledge, the institutional knowledge of the plumbing or electrical, whatever it may be, to continue. But now we have something in code that will allow them to continue operating. And I think that's a vitally important part of this piece of legislation.
And if I may, Chairman Collins, I'll say this. By being around folks like this all the time that are in this line of work, they help each other out. This really allows them to legally help each other out so that business can continue for at least 90 days to get somebody else on board who has that appropriate license. And if that doesn't work out for 90 days, they can appeal to the state board for an additional 90 days in order to satisfy that. So this is codifying neighbors helping neighbors.
Ms. Bennett.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to make sure that I satisfy Representative Williams' acclamation of this is the Karen Bennett Day. What I'd like to do is applaud you because, and one of the other chairmen may have said it, But not only does this help the business to keep their doors open, it helps clients and consumers to be able to receive the services. So I want to thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Number 14, sorry. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to, for the sake of clarity, on lines 530 through 532, just reading that language, only death triggers this particular provision, only death. Mr. Chairman, you know, just a few years ago, COVID did not kill all of us, but it certainly incapacitated some folks. They were in the hospital for a long period of time, and the good Lord still have them here. So wouldn't it make sense, let's save something, you know, I've never been a plumber or electrician, but those are some dangerous occupations, right? They can get hurt.
Well, you also the public.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what happens if they get hurt? They didn't die, but they get incapacitated. Would this also trigger the same mechanism as well?
You bring up what I think is a great point. Technically, though, they would still be holding their license, but I'm envisioning somebody, say, a stroke. You know, they're incapacitated. So, no, this doesn't address that. Technically, though, they hold their license. I'm not sure how you would function. You would satisfy the law from a standpoint of the business operating. As you mentioned, that there's the momentum, the internal organization that would be able to continue to function because they have the capacity and the knowledge to do so. You're in a quandary, though, of getting new business, going to pull a permit where that license is required, or doing some action where that license is necessary. So you bring up a great point.
Yeah, because that's the conundrum, right? We still want them, that small business, that family still to survive, but their loved one, for whatever reason, you know, fell or incapacitated. They're not dead, but this provision says upon their death. And so just wanted to bring that to the attention.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Squire Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Vance, for bringing this. And thank you, sir, for updating it. What's fascinated me for 22 years, and I know I've had citizens ask me this, why does it take us 30 and 35 years to update things in government here? We have things, I remember when I first got here, do you know we were just moving some stuff off the books to keep you from tying your horse up on Main Street and spitting inside bars? Why does it take so, the people must be very disappointed in us that we update licenses that should have been updated at least every 3 to 5 years. So no wonder we don't have people to enforce. And we're not getting the money in. We still paying 1980 rates. But I'm just disappointed, and I'm part of the problem because, and I look around, it's just like when I used to be mad with senior citizens. Now I'm one. But I hope that going forward, we don't take 25 and 30 years to correct the obvious. It's a long time. I'm so glad, Vance, you look like you about in my age group. Another few years, we about have never had this done because you wouldn't have been here. All right.
To someone answer you, there's nothing that stimulates people at the board level to do it. You know, there's 25 members of the board, and I'm the only one that's been out there really trying to do something like this, you know.
Jesus.
But here again, keep in mind, I'm a professional engineer, so I'm in a different sector. They're actually contractors, so their day-to-day needs are probably different than mine in terms of having to stay busy and keep the money coming in and all that. So, you know, I think maybe we're just fortunate that, you know, I looked at this and said, we need to do something, you know. And more importantly is Sean Reed. I tell you what, She has been absolutely a lifesaver in doing this. She's really the one that made it possible.
All right.
Let's see, Ms. Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and not to belabor the point, sometimes the comments of our colleagues does trigger additional thoughts. And if you haven't guessed already, I'm very consumer driven, very consumer protective. And so the purpose of a license is to protect the public. And so if we were to go back to the deaf for sure, but what do we do in a case where someone is permanently incapacitated and they really cannot oversee the people who work under their license? How do we protect the public in that regard?
Then Ms. Bennett, I think it goes back to that person still holds that license. They have plenty of time to get someone in place. The work can still go on because you still have a license holder. You're still protecting that consumer you're doing that job for. Now, if the owner of the company has a stroke, then there's going to be people that kick in there, and they're, no business has to plan ahead. They plan for these kind of things. So hopefully they'll have somebody to step in within those 90, 60, 30 days. It may be less than that, where that person's incapacitated, but people are going to help them out so the consumer's job will be satisfied, and then give that company time to make those arrangements to go forward.
And I understand that, and I really, really, really appreciate it. However, in those circumstances where a business or company may not have the best intentions and want to continue to operate without that oversight of someone who holds the license, how do we, I know we can't police everything, but that would be my only concern.
To answer you, we get complaints like that. There is a mechanism in the state in which people file complaints and they report unlicensed activities. Now, personally, I don't think there's enough teeth that we have to do anything about it, but there is a mechanism there. And so that aspect of it, it's going to take the public to report it. And generally, give you an example, I remember reviewing one, a guy fell through a woman's ceiling 3 times before she finally told him to go home. 3 times. So, but there are people out there that are with or without a license that, are reported on. Yes.
Number 24.
I want to just kind of use my personal business as an example. I hold the head license of my funeral home in Cumming. It's under you have to have a funeral director in full and continuous charge. But I'm down here for 3 months. I have a wife there, a team there that I expect to serve that public the right way, in compassion and in a business type manner to protect my interest and investment that I have. So I think, with this type situation, it's kind of the same, whether somebody's incapacitated or there is a death, you as a business should have programs in place that if there is a death, if I am, down here, or if I'm sick, life and death goes on. And I just wanted to kind of mention that.
All right. Any other questions from the committee? I want to explain my concern to this. I think Ms. Bennett came pretty close to it, but, in the case of a death of a licensee, and this would be if a business that's doing business in one of these professions, if that person that holds the license dies, then you have an unlicensed company that is offering service.
Presently, yes.
To me, that is a bad message to send because somebody's got to be responsible. I'm a licensed real estate broker. I've got a number of agents, and I do have a couple of them that are assistant brokers or deputy brokers. If something happens to me, then they will fill in. But the point is, everybody, every profession, somebody's got to be in charge for the benefit of the consumer and for the benefit of that company. I would really like to see a change in this language dealing with the death to specify that if And I will tell you a good case is and I'll give you an example. There was a firm up in northeast Georgia. The broker died about 3 weeks ago. They didn't have a backup assistant broker, but they were allowed to go to, the real estate commission allows them to go to another broker, and that broker can oversee that paperwork. And that's, you know, that's just a thought to this committee.
That is kind of the intent behind this, that they would have to bring someone in from, as you said, there's other firms that will support as a community.
I understand, but this isn't saying that though.
No, it's not.
And that's what it needs to say. Sean Marie, can you look at that, the pertinent sections on that and put that, that upon the death of the licensee, if there is not someone that's got to be, they've got to have somebody that will affiliate with them, whether either with another firm or, I mean, you may have multiple licenses within the same firm.
Sure.
You know, and that would be fine. One of those could step in as long as they're licensed, but you gotta have somebody needs to be licensed for the benefit of the public and for the contractual rights of that work being done.
But keep in mind, even with what you're saying, procedurally, there is a time lag that even that person stepping up, you know, is coming in, you know, you gotta go find that person, you gotta possibly get them, you know, registered with the state, you know, as being the agent for the building. So there will be a time lag. You're not gonna instantaneously be able to do this, you know, in 15 minutes. So what I'm getting at, even though we're saying 90 days, you know, whether it's 4 days or 90 days, you still have some gap in there that is gonna have to happen. It's gonna be realistic.
If you have a firm and it has a licensee of record and they have another employee that is there that is licensed, are you saying it would take a period of time to acknowledge that licensee?
Yes, you got to register with, as a corporation or whatever, with the state that they're the ones that doing that. So there is some time lag.
So then in the case, if the person is incapacitated, they're not dead, that means that license is still active.
That's correct too.
So if they're dead, that's the only one where there is no licensee.
Yeah.
And so if I understand what you're saying, then if they die, then someone that is licensed could oversee.
Yeah.
And that would be, could possibly be a pretty or could basically be, and we could draw that into the language to say that another licensee, if there's a death that occurs with the principal license, that firm could pull in another license to oversee until a decision is made to the future of that company, couldn't we?
Yeah.
Well, there you go, Sean Marie.
I guess I'm just not sure if there's a part of this sheet that's already. So that would be my question. Like, couldn't someone step in already? Like, if you have a backup, or if you call the, you know, another, because this isn't just a fun at one instance, it's really for all professions that are licensed under this chapter. So if you got someone else to step in, you're not prohibited from doing that.
No.
Are you?
No.
So I don't know that the language necessarily needs to be adjusted to allow for that occurrence that you're talking about. It's just a matter of how much time do they have to have that person agree to step in. And presently it's 90 days in the bill with the possibility of extending it for another 90 days. And what I hear you saying is you may want to limit the amount of time that they have, but I'm not sure that the current language of the bill, unless I'm missing something, would prohibit.
I think what I'm saying is that in the case of an incapacitation, you know, quite frankly, there's a lot of skilled trades where the person that owns a building or the licensee, they may not be hands-on anyway. They may have employees that have been running that business. But still, as a rule, somebody needs to be in charge as far as the decision-making process. Somebody to be held liable, if I may be so bold as to say it that way, to be sure that that work is being done in accordance to the standards it's supposed to be done. And that's the reason I was saying that, you know, it's one thing that if someone is incapacitated, well, then those people working for that company may continue to operate because that person is still alive. But once that person is dead, somebody needs to be, if I might, and I'm confused and starting to confuse myself, but somebody needs to be licensed, whether it's an employee that works for the firm, or if they do the way in the real estate business, we hire a broker to step in to oversee that operation until the firm is dissolved or somebody in the firm gets a broker's license. And in this case, one of these professional licenses.
Well, that is the intent. I guess I see a scenario where, you know, maybe you're a 3-4 man shop or something like that. You got a good foreman, but you got the owner that's holding the license. You know, the foreman may not have a license. Now you've got to go out and try to find somebody else that's willing to do that, and you have to contractually negotiate with them to do it. You know, and you go to the first guy and he says, "I'm so busy, I don't have time. Economy's good, I'm working." You know, so now you're going to look for another guy. So there's inevitably going to be some lag in that. And if the company doesn't have the capacity to continue, in other words, you don't have the personnel that can carry on with the momentum of what they had, they're going to stop anyway. If they have the momentum of carrying on, they've been doing it anyway, probably without the direct supervision of the license anyway. So, I mean, I'm amenable to what you're saying, but I'm glad just to have this language over what we did have.
The language before the language that's being added clearly says that no partnership, limited liability company, corporation shall have the right to engage in business unless it is regularly connected with such partnership. I'm not going to read all the business entities. Actively engage in the performance of such business on a full-time basis to a valid license. So if they're able to call the next shop and they're able to step in, and I'm reading from lines 523 to 527, then I think they're good. They can step in the next day. And I'm not sure we need to add anything. It doesn't matter the reason if they don't, they have to constantly have it. If you want to add in language that says that they have so many days to do it, whether they're upon death or incapacitation, then we could add that. But otherwise, I think the language already contemplates if for some reason there's a day where someone is either incapacitated or dead, that there has to be some language. I think this language was trying to add in a time period for which a grace period for that to happen. But I would be happy to draft anything.
Well, I'll be more than glad to ask the committee members what their thoughts is on this. Dean?
I want to make sure that whatever we do, that it has been in cooperation with the group that represents these contractors, so that it'll represent the feelings of everyone, because a lot of smaller businessmen, and like I've said before, in another life, I was in productivity consulting. And the amazing thing is, the smaller firms, especially in HIV, we found out, HVAC folk, that they had more millionaires than any single other business in America in these 4- and 5-person firms. These were quiet millionaires, rode around in older pickup trucks, went to church in bib overalls, and was worth a real $1 million, not on the paper. But they did not have the type business that would ruin another business because they couldn't finish the contract. They're usually small businesses anyhow. But I just want to make sure that we don't make it tough on small businesses contractors, make it tougher. I don't know about, things have improved a lot. A lot of people doing financial planning and stuff that didn't do them in the past. But I don't know if this is as big a problem as it sounds here, that at death, I think got to straighten that out some though. What happens to the business? I thought the biggest problem was how do you continue the business after the death of the license holder? That needs to be part of their business plan. The burial insurance part. Get Patty in here, bitch. But it ain't go right ahead.
Mr. Chairman, if I can speak to that briefly. Over the weekend, I met with a young man who's been running the business about 20 years by himself. It's a two-man crew. It's just him and another fellow. And I've known both of them since they started in it. Well, he got in it because his father died, who had the business to start with. And I said, what did you do in the interim? I showed him this language right here. He said, just like I told y'all earlier, he said, another company helped us out till I got my license, you know, and back then it was a little faster getting your license, and he's been doing it ever since. But he said another company helped us out for about 2 months until I got my situation settled and got on my feet and I took over the business, and he and another fellow, the same fellow that was there with his daddy, have run that business ever since. So it can be done. And what we tried to do here is spell out a way and give a little bit of remediation. We say 90 days to get your house in order, you know, with the work still gonna be done because other companies are gonna help you. You know, small business people help small business people. You know, the big boys sometimes don't help the big boys, but the little boys help the little boys. And so he said that. He said he thought this was good language. He said he wished he'd had it back then, the 90 days, because it did, it wouldn't have been a problem. He said he had his in 2 months. So he'd been ready to go.
If I understand the way you just explained that, that's exactly what I said about the broker in North Georgia that died. He died, and they reached out to another broker with another firm that came in to oversee the.
Well, it disallows that.
Yeah.
It disallows that, Mr. Chairman.
It may allow it, but it doesn't say it in code.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if I'm thinking correct, Sean Marie, that what we could say is that in the 90-day period, that upon notification, if there is a licensee who will affiliate themselves to that firm. Ms. Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We still go back to liability oversight licensing. And I'm happy to hear that there's always a community that is willing to step in and step out. And should there be a complaint, then will that Goodyear neighbor who decided to step in, will they assume the responsibility of the complaint? Or should there be a way that when someone does step in, that they are willing to assume the licensing? It's not a buddy system, but a regulatory system where they are legally bound to accept the oversight and responsibility of that company. That's one part. The other part, Mr. Chairman, when the meeting first started a few bills ago, we debated whether or not it should take 30 days or 45 days for any professional to be licensed. And so it looks like under this, should Sean Marie find the appropriate language, I would like to be consistent and go back to what we just passed during this meeting of 45 days. Thank you. So there was two issues there.
Ma'am, I'll take 45 over 0. Yes, ma'am. I understand. I understand. We're not adversaries here. We're all trying to get this. Exactly right. We're all trying to get to.
That could be wrong, but I had to work with some apprentice barbers. Took 90 days for an apprentice to get authorized, but they gotta go in front of a lawyer to be an apprentice.
Most boards, you get 90 days and then you can go back for another 90, like funeral board. If we lose a director or somebody over one of my funeral homes, I've got to go out and find that right person. That's when we grab the first person on the street.
Yeah, but I can't see an apprentice needs a lawyer on the board to sign off on that apprentice, not the license.
That's why I think 90 is better than 45.
So we just went back, we just.
I know, on that one.
But ongoing board.
All right.
It's hard, but then you have to revisit the board. They can give you
All right,
another
to the
90.
committee members,
You technically get
to the author of the bill, since you were gonna pull the bill anyway today, we're gonna hold this in the breast of the committee. I want you to get with, Sean Marie. And I see there were two gentlemen perched over their haunches back there that's been pretty good over the years about dealing with a lot of license. Do y'all understand what I'm saying? One of the things that gives me a lot of anxiety to this is we've been so concerned as licensing boards has about so many people that have been working without a license. And if you do go this path, it's going to take longer than 90 days for a family member if they're not already licensed or working on it. Because the electrical contractor's license and plumbers, you have to take a cram course from Georgia Tech just to pass a test, you know. So they could affiliate with, as long as somebody is there to affiliate with.
And that person will still have to file an application with the Secretary of State to be the temporary qualifying agent for that business, and that takes.
Well, then that could be done on a temporary basis in the case of a hardship of a disability or a death of the license, of the principal licensee. And we could, if they've got it, you know, you could actually give them the 90 days as long as they have somebody on record. Does that sound feasible?
I'm thinking that you need the 90 days to find that person to be on record. That's kind of what the 90 days is about.
You think it'd take 90 days?
Hopefully not.
So much for all that neighborly compassion that somebody's just gonna run right up there and say, "Can I help you?" before you go out of business.
Well, keep in mind, the 90 days is not, we're not concerned about them going out of business. We're as much concerned in the fact that they're able to continue to function legally based on state law during that period of time.
But without a licensed person to be in charge.
Correct. So do you just shut them down and say, "That is closed," or do you say, "Look, you gotta have some grace period to fix your problem"? And that's what we're saying. You got 90 days. We're not trying to define how you fix it. We're not trying to define how you run your business. We're just saying that as a grace period, you're able to stay in business, but you gotta fix this.
Mr. Chairman, they might have 15 or 20 journeyman plumbers, and you're gonna put these people out of business and not be able to function. And that's why we set all this up. And the same thing goes for apprentice, electricians and things like that. If we don't do it the way that they're recommending, these people might be put out of work. And those are critical people that we need right now to fulfill those contracts.
The people doing the work
No,
will make this recommendation.
So that's
No, actually, that came from me.
the criticalness of this, because you might have, underneath that one contract, you have a number of journeymen, a number of apprentices, they're all working under that. And it gives us a time frame to keep working, to fulfill those contracts, of people have already been doing the work. So the contract is with, the contract is with one person, and that one person, even though they have many people that are experienced and know what they're doing.
And, Mr. Chairman, when we showed this to those entities, they were okay with this 90 days. They were okay
That's
with
what I'm
it,
talking about.
to solve exactly what Mr. Rolo's talking
That's
about,
the language.
a grace period.
Right. Excuse me 1 second.
Yeah, I know, you know, why they had to be 6 months for me?
Or they had.
They just got it on their resume, they ain't doing that.
So it seems like they still have grace period. Looks like they still have a grace period of 30 days.
They're asking for a 90-day grace.
No, don't be that.
All right. Sean Marie has pulled the law up that even in the real estate practices, if a broker dies, they have 30 days to either affiliate with or to replace. Would you have a difficult time with changing the number of those days? Now, I know that probably is set because the boards don't meet, but every how often?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, where are we 30?
I mean, how many, well, my question is, how often do the boards meet?
Well, keep in mind, this is not an action for the board. This is an action that the owner of that company has to resolve. So they've got to get right with the state and saying that we're compliant. So they didn't take action on the board.
Does the board not require them to come before them?
Not for purposes, at least not the rest board, for purposes of saying that we've got our agent in place. That's more one for the Secretary of State and corporate law side of the thing. So they don't have to come forward.
Sean Marie, can you give me a little language about affiliating with?
Huh?
In the funeral business, we
Yeah.
do.
Do you?
Yes, you gotta go all the way to Macon and stand before the board.
I think Sean Marie's gonna get you some language right now. Didn't know we'd be pulling the real estate code out to use that language. Sit down over here.
Okay.
Come on over here, hon.
I know, I'm gonna go get my bill.
So you think 30 or 45 days would be ample time to affiliate with?
I really can't answer, but like I say, anything over 0.
The boards meet how often?
It can go anywhere from 2 to 3 months.
So the joint, I'm sorry, hon.
No, no.
So the joint secretary, how much authority are they given to accept between the board meetings?
I can't say, that's a separate board. That's what we're doing.
All right. On this line, 530. So we got 90 days. Can you put the language in there that they've got 30 or 45 days. I really don't have a hard side to it. But they can either affiliate with or replace. Lauren?
I just, being on a board and dealing with the licensing agencies down there, I think that's not enough time.
You don't think it's enough time?
I really don't. I mean, I've dealt with, it's one, it's like I went back and said it. I'd rather get help from somebody while I'm finding that right person than just go out and hire the first person off the street that just appease the board. But I got somebody that's maybe not the best for the business or best for my customers or the most talented. So I just don't think,
Let me think for just a second. All right.
Unless you have incapacity.
Do you think that would it be helpful if we went to 60 days? Just leave the language, change it to 60 days.
Yes.
That way they've got 2 months, probably a little bit longer, as long as they don't notify the board that somebody's kicked off. Because if they're incapacitated, they're still alive and their license is still active.
Right.
All right. What is the feelings of the committee? I think we will. Always try to help folks that sit behind me over there, because they could stick a knife in me, you know.
60 more days.
60 days instead.
I'm going to accept the motion. Hopefully somebody will make the motion to change the 90 days to 60. Give them a full 2 months because of the infrequency of when these boards actually do meet.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion amendment that we change the day to be able to find someone that hold a license for that company from 90 days to 60 days.
General, the language we're talking about.
Yes.
All right. All right, now, do we have any other questions from any of the committee members, if this isn't thoroughly confusing now? All right, Chair will accept a motion.
Correct. You want to do the same thing. You want to get out, yeah, you want to keep it consistent.
All right, the Chair will accept a motion.
I made the motion.
All right, well, I need a motion to pass the bill,
Okay,
and then we'll do a second, then we'll accept an amendment.
okay. I'll make a motion that,
We have a motion due pass. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Do we have any amendments or discussion?
I'd like to make a motion, we have an amendment to change the 90 days to 60 days in 2 places, for not only for the initial ask, but to be able to go back with, to the board and ask for a hardship for another 60 days.
Everywhere it appears in the bill.
Yes.
All right. We have a motion. Do we have a second to the motion?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor of the motion to change 90 to 60 days? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now, back to the full bill. We might as well just make it a committee substitute. Yep, as a committee substitute. We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Any comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Bye.
Mr. Chairman, thank y'all in the committee, Ms. Jan, Ms. Shaw Marie. Thank y'all so much.
Chairman, can I say a word before we go?
Yes, sir.
I want to apologize if I in any way misrepresented Representative Stevens' bill. He and I texted each other back and forth a little bit. It did appear there was some expansion, but there is definitely some change in the law, so I apologize. for
Right.
misrepresentation.
To the committee members that are here, remember you have a committee dinner tomorrow night?
Yes.
I hope you'll remember. Tell Jan if you're bringing a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, just don't bring them both at the same time.
I will bring a boyfriend.
What?
We'll get these for you to sign real quick.